18 meeting of the Board of Architectural Review. And the planning board will follow. Can we take the roll?
Joseph Clark,
Here.
Michael Beldotti,
Here.
John Fry,
Here.
Kaya Gam,
Here.
Jeff Gasparo,
Here.
Walter Ludlam,
Here.
Lynn Brooks Omni, Director of Planning and Development,
Here.
Stuart Kahan, Corporation Counsel,
Present.
and we also have Joe Chimelli from Keller Sessions.
All right, well, thank you. We have quite a crowd tonight. I guess the Olympics are over.
No more curling.
Yeah, whatever else is more interesting than watching paint dry. So, okay, let's begin this evening. 49 Spring Street is.
They are not here at their last visit to the board. You guys sent them to the zoning board and they have yet to submit a complete application, so they're not here tonight.
Okay. So then let's move along to 80 Main Street. This is the applicant seeking VAR for minor changes as a result of as-built facade as compared to the original plan.
Yes. So just to update the board, since we have some new members, I know.
Can't hear you back here. When you go, you can hear.
Sorry. Is that better? Is that better? Can you hear it now? No? Okay. So just to update the board, this application is here for a revised elevation change that they have. Originally, the project was approved under BAR 21-11 on April 24th of 2012 for a 25-unit building for affordable senior apartments. They returned to this board, the BAR and the planning board, on September 23rd of 2014 and asked the planning board to revise the resolution to note that only 10% of the units would be affordable. It would still be a 25-unit building for seniors. And the bulk of the apartments that were not affordable would be market rate. On April 23rd, 2015, they pulled building permit B 15-1086 for the construction of a 25-unit building. That permit expired on April 23rd of 2017. And on April 24th of 2017, they pulled building permit B17, 1952. Sorry. That's a dead battery. So on April 24th of 2017, they pulled building permit B17-1952 for the balance of the construction work that wasn't completed under the original building permit. And the building inspector recently sent the applicant back to the BAR because they have slightly modified the exterior facade. And I believe they're here tonight. So if you could just come up to the podium.
Okay, everybody, on your side. That's quite a modification.
Rotating 90 degrees.
Here, give it a shot.
You gotta,
Right click and
Yeah, right click to
Do you want to be in
rotate.
charge of the computer? There we go. More. Go down
I
to
can
more.
read
More.
it.
More. Okay.
I can read this. When it says rotate, just press rotate. There you go.
Two more times.
Yeah, one more time. Two more times.
Two more times.
Two more times. One more. There you go. Okay, now we're okay. Good evening. May I start? Okay. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Hugo Subotovsky. the architect of record of the project. Don't remember too many of you, well, some of you.
Take the microphone and check it.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, here. Here.
He needs the mic.
Hello? Okay. My name is Tilu Sukotowski, and I'm the architect of the project. And when we came here for approval, don't remember how many members of the board were still at that time. It was going to be built as a stick building, and because of economics and speed, we turned the building into prefab construction. Due to the constraints of the prefab, there were some minor changes to the elevations, which I indicated for easiness of the board to realize what they are and see what they are. I bubbled them here, and we put two different elevations, the one that was approved by the board and the one that was a resultant of these changes. And there were minor changes in basically the modulation of the windows. Other than that, basically the building remained the same. In order to make it clearer, what I did is I took a rendering of the building, which I will show first to the board and then I will turn to the public. Okay, this was the original rendering of the building, and this is the as-built of the building. And we can see that, for example, the modulation in these windows here change. Okay, the windows are slightly larger. Okay, but essentially, these pictures were taken, unfortunately, now in the winter. Okay, the landscape yet didn't grow up to what we have in the building. But essentially, we think that the concept of the building, the architectural gestures, and the building itself, I think is the same to what was approved by the board.
The only changes on windows?
The only changes are, for example, these windows here, okay, that they are like slightly bigger. But, I mean, you can see this is a building, and this is the rendering. Okay, so you can see that basically the modulation stay almost basically the same. The windows are basically a little bit larger here than here, not that much. Okay, but basically the gable remains the same, the building, the setback of the building, the balconies, the roof lines, okay, everything remained the same. They were really minor changes just due to the modular
Well, the
construction.
transoms are also gone at the first floor. That entire band of transoms,
This here?
the transoms above the doors and windows, there.
This here, yes,
Those
yes.
are all
Right, the windows, instead of doing transom, they made the windows bigger, correct. The windows before there were two and a transom, and the transom basically became, just a door became taller, you're correct. Colors remain the same. Gables, gestures, railings, everything remains the same.
What orientation is that? Is that east, west, north, south, that upper?
But this is a river, so that's west. This will be facing east. And these are the two elevations, one facing west, one facing east. Okay, it's the same. And the changes are identified in the drawings. Here we bubbled the area that basically was affected.
And the building is sited where it was supposed to be sited, the
Yeah.
elevations didn't change.
No, correct.
So the building department brought it here because of the window changes, essentially?
Correct. The window changes and the minor changes like Mr. Joe Fry mentioned about the transoms and
And the siding material is the same that
Yes,
has been
yes,
all along?
the siding, the stock or everything is basically the same, yes. Yes, the building was built. Because the outside of the building, we were in control because the prefab basically delivered the building unfinished. So we finished the building according to what was approved.
So, any questions from the board? No? Let me move back behind. Yeah, I was gonna get to the public. Yeah. So questions from the public? Come up and grab the mic.
Hey, my concern was, you had said that they had got an extension to the building after it was approved by the board?
Well, first, can we get your name?
Walter King,
Oh. And you must be a neighbor of State Street?
22 State Street.
Okay, so,
You had said, she had said that the board had approved after they got extension to do this?
not an extension of the building,
No, that's it, for the time.
time.
But the problem is, we was not notified, at least I wasn't notified, they can question it. My thing was, there was a pre-building there. I'm right indirectly in back of this building, which my Riverview now is gone from my property that I own. And I speak of a member of a group of 70 men that I'm speaking of. We own a building on 22 State Street. The pre-building was in the back, on one side. Now the building blocks our total Riverview. We had no access of any of this information being going on. And then when the building's erected, my Riverview is gone. I don't understand how this can happen and not, we as landowners that had a Riverview is gone now, for one thing. The next thing I'm concerned about is as I said, clearly state the change. I don't understand how this can be done without the property owners. And it's not just me, I'm sure. That's why we're here tonight. Because it's totally unacceptable to me with that. So that's what I'm here about, as well as the fact that there was a parking lot behind us. The parking lot now has a building, and the front of the building is there. And the parking lot, I assume is going to be in the front. I don't even know. But you have to tell me that. But that's why I'm here, and that's my concern.
Okay, so can you all hear me back there? So, let's take the first question first, on the notification.
Excuse me.
Well, this is many, many years ago. I remember a significant amount of the neighborhood coming to discuss this, including meetings with the developer to talk about siting in the building. There was an extensive conversation about this, and I can't address why. I think I know where 22 State Street is. This is the Sonic building?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I don't know why that is, we can find that out, but this went on for quite a while. So that's number one. That part of the siting of the building, et cetera, was part of the planning board process. There are two pieces to each development. First one is the site plan. The second one is what we call Board of Architecture review. And that's what the building is going to look like, the exterior of the building. And what we're here tonight to discuss is that during construction, there was some modifications made to the windows and the door frames, but no physical change to the actual structure of the building, siding of the building, elevation. So this was really a question of window change, window treatment change. So, and apparently we notified everybody about that piece.
No, we didn't.
So, for tonight, do we notice people?
Tonight.
We do.
Did they notify anybody?
No.
How did we get this information?
So we will have to look over who went. I mean, if you're a property owner and I don't think in 2018, we don't do the.
No, but there are requirements in
Right.
terms of distance and who gets notified.
So So there's a distance requirement, so if you are proximate neighbors, like your property borders,
300 feet.
then you will be notified. If you are a tenant and not the owner of the property, you will not be notified. So if you live in a multi-unit apartment, which there are a few down there, only the landlord would be notified, whether they're on premise or off premise. That's how the notification occurs.
I understand that, but we were not notified.
Okay.
And especially, and well, I would have been here, but also the fact remains is that I'm just trying to figure out how can you approve that you have a building that's already there, and you tear down the building that's there, and then turn around and put another building up in a different location without concerning the people who are behind, because what you did is you actually cost us, the people that had existing property, money, because now we don't have that riverview. We don't have it anymore. Now that that building's erected, everybody, that I'm sure, I'm not speaking just for myself, does not have that view. And I was not notified. If I'd been notified, I would have been here as a property owner. And we don't rent, we're one building owner.
You're not the only voice that expressed that concern at the time.
Okay.
Okay, it was well vetted, but there's nothing in the zoning ordinance that requires a property owner that's between you and a view to maintain that view. They have the right to use their property within reason according to good design. So, but there's no view shed written into this local ordinance. So I understand your comment and whether that occurs later on, but generally speaking, that's not part of really any ordinance.
Does that
But
make
this-
sense? I mean, there were at least, there were at least 4 public meetings with significant number of neighbors here. And the first submittal went through several generations of evolution based on neighbors' comments, including the site plan, including the building massing, including the roof lines. It wasn't going to solve every view shed concern. That project was never going to solve, but modifications were made based on a significant number of neighbors attending meetings and participating. So I don't have an answer as to during that period, but again, as I mentioned, that's probably 4 years ago, why you weren't aware of that process. But I can assure you, many of your neighbors were.
Right, I mean, I'm sure they're here. I mean, I'm not the only one, I'm sure gonna get this, but I was not aware of it because I was aware of my concern would be, because all you did was decrease our property. So now if I go to sell my property, I can't sell my property with a riverview. But now the new landlords have that riverview. They have the income, they have everything for them, and I have nothing now at this point. My property is worth $100,000 less than what it should have been if I still had that riverview, I could sell my property. Now they erected this new building, and I understand what you said, but I did not receive anything. If we had received anything, I would have more than likely been there. And I can go on and on and on. I don't want to go on and on and on, but I have to express the concern when you do these kind of things. You have to think about the person behind you because it's done. First of all, I pass by there every day, if not 2 or 3 times a day. The building was gone in a day. When did these things happen? I was like, the building's gone. Then the next thing you know, the material's out of there. Never got nothing on this, personally myself. And I've been looking for it, because I've been in this town village for over 50 years. So I know. And it just leaves a bad situation for me, and me being a property owner in this, that this building is erected and put in my view of sight of the river view of the Hudson. I thank you for your time, I thank you for hearing from me, I thank you for listening to me. I'm sure there's other people that want to say it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, does anybody else want to express a different view? Sir?
Go ahead.
I think we gotta pass this man.
Hello, my name is Wilson. The guy right there he's the owner of the house. That's my father. I'm going to speak for him. I live with him in the 18th State Street. I've been living there for 15 years. I live in Austin for over 20 years. I live right next to the library before. Like the gentleman in the back, there was only one time that we had a letter. One time. The only reason that we came a few times is because the neighbor told us there will be a meeting over here. We talk about the people. I know it's gonna be hard to fight against this group of people who's building these apartments, right next to the river. I work in construction for many years, and I know it's gonna happen eventually here, Peekskill, Croton, any town right next to the river. I got a few pictures from before and after, and I spoke before, and I don't know if it's good or not to talk again, because sometimes I don't feel like speaking in front of these people is gonna work, because I live in the house. I see my father suffering, and he's not getting his sleep because he paid a lot of money for the house. And I got pictures. I don't know if you guys want to see it. If you guys want to see it, I can show you. But that's not the only problem. I'm not here about the windows and landscaping. If you see the construction, it's not a construction. Those are prefabric houses. I work in the construction. That's not even construction. They just prefabric and put it together. They start working at 5:30 in the morning, so people can't see it. I got videos. I got pictures. If you guys want to see it, just you can call me. I got the cell phone. I can leave you anytime. I'm not happy. I'm a little nervous right now because I'm not happy. I got a lot of issues. I have a list of things that bother me and my neighbors. I got pictures, videos of birthdays, Christmas. I don't even know if it's worth it or not. My point is not about the windows and landscaping. They're trees, they don't have a wall, and the way they work, it's not even the right way that it's supposed to be. They start working at 5:30 a lot of times in the morning. So I don't care about the windows and landscaping. I only care about the house and the way that they built those apartments. And I don't know if it's safe. Across of my house, there's a fire department. I got pictures of those big trucks, the fire trucks. I don't know if something happened in the future, how they're gonna help people if there's a fire in those apartments. I don't know the rules, sorry. I'm just concerned, just looking. I don't know anything about rules or size and we offer the house for sale so they can build something better and nice. Not just to build apartments, prefabric and sell it. I got something over here. That's not the way it looks right now. It's just, computer pictures that they prefabric and they offer online. That's not the way it looks. You can go over there and take a look. That's the way they wanted to make a look, but I know what's inside those walls. I know, I work in construction. I don't think everything is level and right. I know, sometimes I do that too in my house. I can patch it, paint it. You guys know the rules, not me. So I want to show you something before, because this is probably the last time they're going to speak in front of you guys. I know in the winter, the best pictures of sunset is in the winter. And I got pictures from before, and this is the one, this is my little boy, this is now. This is what I have behind my house. And this is the pictures when I had it before. I got hundreds of pictures, hundreds, believe it or not. This is the one that I have right now. This is the construction, that's my little boy right there. Like I say, I don't care about windows and landscaping. I only care about the rules, just to follow the rules. I live in Austin. I know if you want to change the water heater, I work in plumbing. If you want to change the water heater, we have to follow the rules. We have to submit papers.
So first of all, I think your list is best turned over to the village, because it sounds like there are issues with construction and activities on the site.
I got videos,
Okay,
if you guys
so
need it.
that operation, the 5:30 in the morning, all that stuff needs to be worked out through the building department. We
Sure.
manage the construction. I have a question. You said you were notified.
Once.
Was this when the building was first
Yeah.
designed? That's right. We notify one time when it's first heard. We don't notify every meeting.
a couple of times they got a letter and we never got that same letter.
But you were but if, Art, I can't explain why you got more than one letter, but you get notified on the first go-round. And I think, we've already, between John and I, we've already discussed, the building, the siting of the building, the design of the building, and the view shed issues. So I don't think we'll go back over that. But for the construction issues, I think the building department, obviously the building department's been there because they saw the change of windows, which I'm sort of surprised about, but I guess that's good. But anyway, I don't think I think the answers to the rest of your questions have been answered. There's a code, the building's designed to code, that's the building department's issue. It's not what we're here tonight to discuss. This was a facade change, the building is up, it's not moving, it was fully approved, it was fully vetted to the public at the time. And whether or not you all were notified, many people were in this room for this project over many months. I don't know what else to tell you about that.
So I only have one more question.
Go ahead.
If something happened in the future, anything, because we never know, something happened. Let's say, I know these apartments, if something bad happened and there's someone's gonna die or something, and I'm speaking because I see there's a camera, I wanna make sure how you guys gonna respond or who's gonna be responsible if something happening. It could be fixed now, no later when those apartments are already sold. Because I know the size of the property, I live there, and I see the little road, and I see the size of the trucks, because I live in the front of the fire department. How they gonna, if there's a fire,
So let me answer your question.
I don't know the rules, that's why I'm asking you.
So there are a couple of things.
Yeah,
Every drawing of every plan has either a registered architect seal or a registered professional engineer seal. They say that they've designed this building to meet the fire and building codes in New York State.
yeah.
And nobody with the exception of one person that's sitting on this board, nobody here has that capability.
Okay.
So it's passed on, it's the licensed engineer, if you work in construction, you know
Yes.
how this works.
No,
right?
that's what I'm asking.
Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah.
PE puts his stamp on it, his registered architect puts their stamp on it, it's reviewed by our code people. This particular project was likely reviewed outside the Village of Austin as well, because of the financing, et cetera, that goes into this. I can't speak to that directly, but generally, most of these things, the Village of Austin code enforcement people aren't the only ones looking at this. So I
It was
think,
reviewed by the fire marshal, and site plan changes were made to accommodate firefighting
Okay.
apparatus.
And with respect to the building permit, when they originally were doing stick build, and then they switched to modular, the building department in 2015 requested that they do a full analysis, and they submitted documentation that the state approved the
so,
modulars.
okay, thank you. So we have two more. Oh, we gotta get a microphone back.
Here I go.
Good evening. I'm one of the property owners, Williams, at 16 State Street.
And Jay Patino from 14 State Street.
And our properties are adjoined because we shared the
Driveway.
community driveway together. Now, I have a concern. You say that we're here tonight to address the changes to the building for the windows. I have a concern about my property, and he has a concern about his property in the back, where there's supposed to be a retaining wall there that's holding up. We have pictures of it right here.
Level to our property.
Level to our properties. That if there's a bad wind or rainstorm,
Sorry? Yeah. And then where the car is.
so when do we address this? You're saying that this is a building inspector's issue, not?
So the project is not done. I don't know, is there a retaining wall on the plan?
No, it's not.
Can
There's
you
a
show-
wall there.
Do you mind showing us where,
Right.
Is this the right?
so here's the building, State Street.
Okay, this is right in the back. This is
Yeah, these are you two here. Okay.
See it?
Can you share it with everybody? Thank you.
Joe, could the applicant kind of state what stage or percent of completion is the site plan?
Yeah, I think that was on the point. I'm kind of looking at the point of the plan. You can kind of see the little point right there where the wall's not finished, and then eventually there'll be a problem.
And where do we stand in the fight at Pittsburgh?
So I think, so if we could, the architect for the project, so the concern, from what I understand, there was a retaining wall?
No.
And so the grade is changed because of the grading of the property. And your question is the transition between your property and whatever improvements they're making, or I'm presuming that the slope that you showed me is on their property, not yours.
Right.
And so there's a plan, there's got to be, the question is, how do you plan to transition from the higher elevation to the elevation that you've now created?
But it was, I'm the architect, I wasn't the site engineer, I was only the architect, but their property is higher, and their property used to slope, and there is rock there, and then it was the level of our property. Our property now is level. Small retaining wall was built there according to the site plan, was submitted that part of the as-built drawings, was not changed from the original approval, and their property remained at the same level. The slope is a slope, and now is contained by the retaining wall.
So,
That's a retaining wall, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
That's a retaining wall that you're saying that's there with those trees there that's coming over the property? Also, those trees, all that's a retaining wall?
No, the retaining wall is on the other side. It's on
Wait,
our
where
side
is
of
it?
the.
Because I don't see, sir,
You
I
have
go
to
back
go-
there every day. I live there.
You have to go, you're not gonna see the
so,
retaining wall
so
from the high
I
side.
think
You're
the
gonna go to
question
lower
is,
side.
That
so
wall is
Lynn,
not-
we need to get the building department out there.
Yes.
To make a
Immediately.
determination as to
Yeah.
what the story is with the grade
Mhm.
and how the transitions are gonna be finally accomplished.
Yeah,
Because it sounds like stuff has been built, but it's not done. And the question is, how's it gonna be completed? Is it gonna be grassed in? Is it gonna be shrubs? Is it gonna be a different wall, et cetera? So can we get somebody out there? This is really part of the construction issue, so, okay?
But can I ask you another question? Is this building put in the place where the original plans were to be built in this area right here?
Yes.
The original,
Yes.
okay.
It was placed where the approval from 2012 was, that's
Mhm.
where it was placed.
That's where it was placed.
That's the
And,
as-built survey that they submitted.
and the height of it.
Yes.
So there is someone out there watching from the village.
Yes.
Yes. The
I
building,
think my battery's is.
the building department requested that as-built survey to confirm that that's what was done after they put in the foundation. Before
You
they
can
got
see,
permission
you can
to
see the
continue
retaining
building.
wall here. That's part of the retaining.
And I
wall.
would
You cannot-
assume there's also progress inspections as
Yes.
construction's occurring. I mean, I'm thinking that's what some people need to hear.
There is,
Yes, and they get calls from the developer, so the building inspector has been out there and will continue to go out there.
No, I didn't, go ahead.
My husband wants to say something.
Good evening to every one of you. A gentleman here, son, came to our house and we had a meeting there. And they brought a blueprint. And what they had said is that the board approved where they're supposed to dig real deep and put the foundation. But they went down deep, but it wasn't enough. So they had 3 floors with the roof. And on that plan, what they showed us at the house, it was lower than my garage. Now it's 2 floors higher than my garage, and I cannot see the Hudson because there's 3 flights. and the foundation was so high that it covered everything. And you were here too, sir, I remember you. And I think you said they had to dig real deep. They went down, but it wasn't enough. And another thing, like he said, you're supposed to know more than I do. Whenever you're building a building, you're supposed to have an entrance and an exit. There's no such thing as that. The trucks in Aston, they're huge. They have to pull in and pull back out. There's no exit. Now, they have the entrance, but there's no exit. I would request that when you all have time, please go down there and visually see what's going on. The building was supposed to be close to the Elks Club. You know what the Elks Club was? They removed it. You all approve it, but what they did, they pushed it more to the rear. The building, if it was close to Main Street, then the parking lot would be in the rear. But what they did, you all approve it, so they just went ahead and they put the building closer to the back, and in front, close to Main Street, that's where the parking lot is. Please go there and visually look. You cannot trust these people. All right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everybody, my name is Carlos Arevalo. I live at 8 State Street. So I'm one of the persons who is, I would say, on behalf of everybody, we oppose any other work doing in this building. I don't understand how he does the windows first, then he comes for approval of the board, or how he does all the work first and then he comes for the permit. In the side of my house, they did tremendous damage. They put, I have my own survey done like 20 years ago. Now he has his own survey, I think, done by himself. And they think my property, my house is on the line, which is not that. The survey that I have before, it shows that the property line was like 1 or 2 feet away from the property line. Now they put a curb in there, they did that. They obviously rip off all the trees that I had by the window, covering my window, rip off my peach tree that was in the front of my house. So, and then rip off the garbage shed that I have attached to the wall without my consent and without telling me that they are going to be doing. So I'm opposing or any other work to be doing that. We are working with them to fix or to put some kind of a wall protecting my house, because my house is dangerously close to the curb. And there is no way, I mean, if there is a fire in there, in the building, that fire truck will come with speed and go into the driveway because there is no space enough. And they have 2 entrances. We have kids. So we got 25 units going on in this building. So we're going to have cars going back and forth. I don't know if one of these persons, sometimes will make a mistake, will drink enough and lose his control and go over to my house. So he's not having anything to accomplish all of this work, to make sure the protection. I understand you guys are the persons in charge of approving these kind of things. But I don't know if you guys, before approving, go right by looking at before you guys approve. Because if this will be your property, I don't think you will be permitting also.
I don't think so either.
So I think you guys, before you guys do anything, you should think on yourselves, on your house, on your family. And the same thing, think on the same with the rest of the people. Because this can be happening. So until we have this resolved, we probably, if we don't get this done in the good manner, we don't know where we're going to end, but it has to be, right now there's a stop work in that, for the property. So, and it has to continue that. Okay? So until that thing is finished, then we cannot continue approving any other work.
That's right.
So that's, one more time again, see, I don't know how things work. We make the changes first, we work first, we do this first, and then we come for the approvals, and I don't think that's how we should be doing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just with regard to something Mr. Aravallo said. I've been in touch with Mr. Aravallo through his attorney on the issue with regard to his property. He is correct, and it does show the role of the building department. There was a stop work order issued here with regard to the work on the entrance to the building, because there was a question as to, was there enough of a setback? We did ultimately get a survey. It showed that there was a sufficient setback. It is my understanding that there are discussions between Mr. Aravallo and his attorney and the owner of 80 Main Street with regard to possibly putting up a guardrail or other devices with regard to your home.
We are
So I know that
discussing
that's
at
going
this
on.
time, but we're not anything yet. They're not providing anything yet. He has a survey which shows different than mine. So that means we have to hire different surveys and start again from the town, because the town should have a specific points where to start and where does it end, and cannot make a mistakes. And I think one survey cannot make a mistake than the other 20 years ago, and can come another one with a different survey 10, 15, 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
And I understand, and that's one of
It's-
the things that I have personally discussed with your lawyer, and that has been going on there with regard to the property.
I mean, if you guys will look at this picture, would you guys allow this?
Right close to our house, you know, we are scared.
I mean,
for
if
our lives.
one car comes in the night time,
Really close.
that's my house.
That's the property.
So if one guy drinks, loses his control, and he goes, so we're going to do that.
I think we've heard sort of sufficient related
¿Cuánto dice que tenían?
to the site plan, despite the fact that
The
the
property line is,
VAR.
actually the property line is like kind of in the front of the property. Yeah. So they just,
And we'll also send a building inspector out to check with regard to the issues of the retaining wall.
So we need to have some kind of a water protection to my house, enough to have.
Excuse me, we have too many conversations going on here. I can't hear anything.
So let's, I think, as I said, I'm not sure if everybody heard me, so I'm gonna say it again. So I think while this was a BAR, the board certainly appreciates you coming tonight and bringing forth these issues that happened during construction. So we have asked that the building department perform a thorough site plan review from the beginning to end and notice any significant changes. And they found the window, which I find interesting. They should be able to uncover any of the other discrepancies that you've raised today and make sure that they, one, at least conform to the drawings that were approved by this board several years ago. Because that was a fully vetted, approved plan, and that's where that is, that's an approved plan. There are probably opportunities as neighbors where you can work together. This is not going away.
I know, it's,
And
we're
so
working
but I don't
on
want-
it,
but I don't
so
want to
until
keep-
that happens, we should, I'm not posing any other work to be doing in this building.
Well, work inside the building is different than work on the site. So I think that there's already been a stop order. Has been already put
And
in
it should be,
place.
it should be a practically a step
And-
on the
and the
building
building
to make
department
us continue work.
will be out there and they will make a determination as to what's correct and what's not correct.
So there's a stop order?
No, there is no stop work order currently in effect. Related to the driveway, that stop work order was lifted with the receipt of the survey which showed the appropriate setback.
So then how are we gonna know that the building inspectors and them are following up with these concerns that we have?
how it should be lifted without complying with all the things we could.
Let me speak out of turn, since I do sometimes. I have the corporation council sitting here, and I have the village manager sitting over there, and I have the director of planning sitting over there. All three heard your concerns tonight. I fully expect that this will be addressed.
Okay.
Sir, one thing I can say is, then we're leaving, is when they came to my apartment, because we had a meeting, that wasn't the blueprint. It was another one showing my garage, where my garage was higher than that building. That is a second blueprint. So if you could get the original blueprint from the first time, and then we see the big difference.
I think those are the renderings, but I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you all.
One question, sir. I'm concerned because I heard you say a lot of things. I didn't hear you say anything about the fire marshal. Because
We did.
the back of the building, there's no way for a fire truck to get to the back of that building, which means it puts all our houses in jeopardy. Because if that house catches fire, that building that we erected catches the fire, we're gonna all burn up. Because there's no way they can get to the back of that building.
There was a process which involved the Village of Austin Fire Department. There was a diagram created.
What I would like for you to do, in all due respect, is go look at it.
Yes.
There's no way in the world you can get back there. I'm trying to figure out how the truck's gonna get back there with the trucks that we have in Austin. And mind you, I've been a fireman in this village for 35 years. I belong to Senate Hook and Ladder. There's no way in the world a fire truck is gonna get there unless it backs down behind our property there. And I don't know how they're gonna do that.
So you're familiar with the C of O process, the certificate?
I'm familiar with all of that.
So the fire marshal will be involved in the C of O process.
I understand that, but you have to also understand, there's also a lot of things going on in the world, and you find out later on that things didn't go properly. You're telling me this.
That's right.
But things in reality in life, we find out things that happen that shouldn't have happened. Go there yourself, please, view it yourself. You'll see there's just no way. Thank you.
All right, I think.
Reinforcing the idea there's a process.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can I just say one thing, and then I'm gonna say goodnight to you? Please, I need to say this, and to you, you're the,
Architect.
architect. Well, who's the owner? The owner here? You're just the architect. Okay, I spoke to one of the engineers when they first started the site back there. I said, who is going to control the dust that we have to put up with? He said, oh, don't worry about that, just let me know. I called the company, I don't know how many times. My house and everyone on that block's house is nothing but dust every day. Dust, and I'm allergic to dust. Dust everywhere. And I have called the company, no one has tried to assist me with that problem. And we are still having it. They didn't water down when after they worked really well to keep the dust down.
I think the answer to that is, those issues, call the building department.
Keep calling the building department?
Don't call the guy who's building.
But the guy told me, he said, call them.
No.
Call the building department?
Always, because then there's a record.
Okay.
Then there's a record.
Thank you, thank you.
They'll send someone out.
So, just doing the last thing, I don't know if you said that the stop work has been lifted. How it's been lifted with my lawyer and it was not filed?
No, your lawyer is aware, I'm sorry. No. Your lawyer knows that it was lifted.
I spoke this just tonight.
Well,
Listen,
if you ask Ms. Goldstein, we've had numerous discussions, she knows the stop work order was lifted. You can check with her, I promise.
when was that?
When was it lifted, or when did I talk to her?
When was lifted?
A couple of weeks ago at least, when the survey came in, but she is definitely aware that it was lifted. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We gotta work on this.
Okay, so, for the matter of the facade change, are there any issues for the board? Is there a motion to approve the changes that were?
Well, it seems like an anticlimax, but I'll move.
Third, somebody want to second it?
I'll second.
Michael, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amen. Okay, carried. So, now, we're done
Thank you very much.
for tonight.
Well, good night.
So, 5 Matilda.
Good night.
Good night. a preamble. We recently, not 20 minutes worth.
No.
2 minutes to refresh the board. You have a working mic.
It's not working. Oh, here we go. So just a brief history before you give your stuff. This board on October, this originally appeared as an application before the planning board. It's PB 15-09. It was originally a request to convert a single-family house into a two-family house. Eventually, the application was removed from the planning board agenda on February 23rd of 2010. The applicant came back December 16th of 2015 and submitted an application PB 19-15, which sought site plan approval for a two-family house in a T-zone again. And then it appeared before the zoning board as zoning board case 37-15 for relief of 270-48B2 for relief of a flag lot. It did not proceed. In 2017, the applicant requested to rebuild the existing single-family house on the existing foundation because it was structurally unsound pursuant to 270-42C of the code. The building inspector reviewed the matter, sent it to the BAR for review of the construction of a single-family house. The BAR reviewed and approved the application, subject to 3 conditions at the time: that the plans would be reviewed by the building inspector, the plans would be reviewed by Keller Sessions, and then prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant would submit plans accurately showing a single-family house. On October 4th of 2017, the applicant pulled building permit B 17-2017.
Okay, so, sir, your name, your address, and your purpose for being here tonight.
My name is, pardon me, I'm recovering from a cold. It's Adam Markovics. I live at 7 Matilda Street. It's one of the adjoining properties. Mr. Clark, I'm sure you're aware of why I'm here tonight. I sent a letter to you by email a month ago. I don't know if the other board members received a copy of this letter. Is anyone else aware of this letter that I sent?
That's why you're here. Our attorney.
Well, with all due respect, I was informed that I have an opportunity to be here at 10 this morning. Okay. What Lynn's summary of the facts failed to note is that I was not given notice of the Board of Architectural Review meeting that was held on March 28th, 2017, at which this plan was approved. I'm an adjoining property owner. I was entitled to notice. I wasn't given any. I've done a FOIL request. Looks like the planning department did in fact send a notice of the meeting to my address, but it was addressed to the prior owners of my home, and it was returned to sender as undeliverable. And so the meeting went forward. I wasn't there, and neither was the other adjoining property owner at 3 Matilda Street. I don't know if a notice was sent to them and also returned as undeliverable. But, you know, unlike the case of a giant building going up in the middle of the village, the only property owners that are affected by the construction of this home are the owners of the adjoining properties, 7 Matilda Street and 3 Matilda Street. Neither was at this meeting on March 28, 2017, at which the plans were approved, albeit conditionally. You know, I appreciate being given the opportunity to come tonight and voice some of my concerns. I think, now, first of all, as a legal matter, the building permit that was issued subsequent to that meeting and pursuant to the approval of the application is arguably null and void, because the application was not approved in accordance with lawful procedure. But I hope not to commence an Article 78. I hope to be able to amicably resolve this with the board and with my neighbor. I never met the adjoining property owner, Mr. Criollo. He does not reside in the premises. The premises at 5 Matilda Street has been condemned for many, many years. He owns it, I believe, as an investment property. My concern is this: I have no issue with Mr. Criollo building a house on his property. The property, for those of you who may or may not be familiar, it's a flag lot. There's a driveway, a long driveway running to 5 Matilda Street. The driveway runs parallel to my house. The driveway was probably built in horse and buggy times and is appropriate perhaps for a horse and buggy. It's 8.5 feet wide and it runs about 3 feet away from the side of my house. We hold our breath every time a car goes up and down the driveway as it stands. Mr. Criollo has proposed building a house that's twice the size of the house that existed there at one point in time. It's going from 1,900 square feet to about 3,500 square feet. The house previously had no garage. This new house has a 4-car garage, 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, I believe. Our concern, and I can't speak to the concerns that my neighbors at 3 Matilda Street may have, is the increased traffic on this driveway that, again, is about 3 feet away from the side of my house. It's barely sufficient to accommodate a single car at 8.5 feet wide, let alone the increased traffic. It could be reasonably anticipated from a house that is 3,500 square feet with a 4-car garage. There's also, of course, the issue of emergency vehicle access. Most of the fire trucks here in Austin are wider than the driveway itself. So I hope this is perhaps a preliminary discussion of the issue. I only received notice that I'd be here, be invited to speak tonight, earlier today. If I can offer a suggestion, it would be this. Mr. Criollo, the owner of the property at 5 Matilda Street, also owns a property on Snowden Avenue, which is, well, it's difficult to describe. 5 Matilda Street is a tiny little street that separates Snowden Avenue from North Malcolm Street. I'm not sure exactly how his property on 36 Snowden is situated, but it's close enough to the property at 5 Matilda that I believe traffic from the new construction could be sort of routed through the driveway on 5 Matilda Street, on 36 Snowden Avenue. So that would be my proposal. I have no issue with the new house going up. What I have an issue with is all this increased traffic going up and down a driveway that's barely sufficient to accommodate a single car. And I think that that traffic could pretty easily be rerouted down Mr. Criollo's property on 36 Snowden Avenue. As far as I know, based on my review of the meeting minutes of the March 28, 2017 meeting, there was no discussion of this issue. Unsurprisingly, I wasn't there, I couldn't raise it at the time. But I suppose my proposal would be to maybe formally or informally get together with Mr. Criollo and discuss the possibility of creating a driveway and whatever easements may or may not be required to make this happen, such that the traffic is routed to his property on 36 Snowden and not, a hair's breadth away from my house.
I can attest to the site. I know the former owner, I know the house very well. I haven't seen it since you moved in. But I can attest to the fact that there is really no barrier between the driveway and the side of the house, whether the property line is 2 or 3 feet. It's really immaterial because it's right up against it. On the other side, you have boulders going up, you actually have rock. So there's really, and I don't even know who owns that part of it with a walk, but there's really no real ability to enlarge and make that driveway wider. So I think it is something that should be considered and be taken into account.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, and I appreciate what Member Gam has pointed out, the application that was here was for the Board of Architectural Review, which has a very limited jurisdiction as to similarities or dissimilarities of other areas. Adam, as you likely know, there was no requirement for site plan approval because this was a single-family home being constructed on the same footprint, which initially, when the application came in here, as Lynn pointed out, it was for a two-family house, which would have required an approval by this board because it was would have been a conditional use within the T-zone. But since it was a single-family house, the BAR was this was viewed only as a BAR application, and you know the code sections 270.56 to 270.58 explicitly indicates what the BAR is supposed to do. I'm not talking about the issue of notice to you, I understand that, but specifically as to what the BAR was to do, it's the issue of similarities and dissimilarities within the neighborhood. The issues you raise would not have been before this board and would not have been an issue before this board because, again, it was not a site plan issue that was presented at that time. I can point out that everything we have to date is that he's building a single-family home at that location, and that he is building it on the same footprint, and he has pulled the building permit as Lynn indicated. He has, from what I understand, demolished the prior structure. He has done all the necessary abatement. He just has not started the construction work. I can assure you that as the work proceeds, as I mentioned earlier with regard to 80 Main Street, the building inspector will be there to make sure he's doing what the plans provide and that he is consistent with those plans. Because I know that there were some questions when this was previously before the BAR back in March of 17 as to whether this is actually going to be a two-family house. But again, the plans that we have and the letter we have from the architect are that this is in fact to be a single-family home at that location. So the role of this BAR was to look at similarities or dissimilarities, and that was the basis for the vote of the approval and the subsequent review. The plans have been reviewed, the plans are continuing to be reviewed, and you know, I know the building department is certainly aware of this, given, I believe it's 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. We know that. The issue in terms of the access one, that's something perhaps to have a discussion with Mr. Criollo, but it's not the subject of this particular board's purview as it relates to what it has to do as a Board of Architectural Review, because again, it's not a site plan review.
Stuart, number one, I appreciate, as usual, your thoughtful analysis of the issues. I think if I had been properly notified of the meeting and had an opportunity to attend, I would have urged that Mr. Criollo be prevented from what's really in effect forum shopping. Okay, he started out trying to build a two-family house. He ran into problems with the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. He ran into problems with his neighbors who attended most of those meetings in 2016. Mr. Criollo basically sort of threw in the towel. He withdrew that application because the forums were not giving him the easy path to approval that he wanted. So he shopped for a more favorable forum, or so he thought, or at least he could, you know, try to bypass having to go before 3 land use boards. He thought maybe he could just get this fast track through one, and got lucky because neighboring property owners weren't at the meeting to raise their concerns. And I think if I had been at the meeting, I would have raised concerns which maybe don't fall within the purview of the Board of Architectural Review. I would have, and I'd have to do some more research into this, insisted that the application go before the planning board. And while it's true there are different sections of the code that set forth the, you know, the purview of these two boards, both boards are here tonight. And they were there on March 28th, 2017, and I would have argued that site plan approval was required.
Again, in this case, given that it was a single-family home, and I understand everything that you're saying, but we can only go by the application that's before the board. And the application was for a single-family house. You're correct that previously it was two-family, but it was single-family. The architectural plans say single-family. Ms. Salmon's letter says single-family. So we all have it as a single-family house.
I could care less that it's a single family or two
Well,
family.
but that makes a difference in terms of where it goes.
Right, and
Because
I would have
again-
insisted that it requires site plan review.
But we don't have that under our code. It's not something under our code.
Well, I think we, again, I hope this is a preliminary discussion, but as I said at the outset, I think the permit here is a nullity as a legal matter because it was issued in violation of lawful procedure. And so, you know, from my perspective, we can either challenge it and get it rescinded by way of an Article 78, or we can try to amicably resolve the situation. So that's all I have to offer tonight. I hope it's just some preliminary thoughts on the topic. I've never had any communications with Mr. Criollo. I think maybe now's the time. Building is not yet started. We saw from the previous applicants tonight, it's harder to undo something that's already built. So I'd like to address this.
I think it's a great idea. So if you're willing to talk to your neighbor and he comes up with a plan.
If I can reach him, unfortunately, he doesn't live next door.
I believe,
Somebody's there. Okay.
I believe for the, just, Mr. Criollo is actually deployed, I believe, in Afghanistan or Iraq currently.
Right.
That is why you can't reach him.
He's the you know the owner in name only. It's his father who owns the property. I'll try to find the father.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we can adjourn the VAR and move on to the planning board. Plateau Associates is here.
So we thought we would come now with a simpler matter, more straightforward. We have a hard copy PowerPoint. I think someone called and wasn't sure about. Brad emailed it to your address, your home?
No.
I mean, to your work, I'm sorry.
Was that just recently?
So just
I'll introduce myself.
but the whole story here is that we've asked you to come tonight to sort of refresh you on where we are. And I don't, let's just make sure the escrow gets replenished so we can do active work on this.
Yes, so my name is Michael Zarin. I'm with law firm Zarin and Steinmetz. Brad Schwartz, my colleague.
It's not connected.
We represent Plateau Associates, and we are, quote unquote, joining the team and going to be spearheading this application. That's our new website. We get into all types of issues. Fashion, sports. That's one of them. All right, so we'll hand the hard copy out. apologize. Next time we will coordinate better with staff and Lynn, try to get these on the PowerPoint. But to Chairman's comments, I'll address those in a second, but I know we are on one of a number of attorneys that have been involved in this application previously. We have reviewed the record. It's a pretty extensive record at that. We know you've all worked very hard. With respect to this application, I think we were able to discern for the record that people are willing and desirous of moving this application forward. I know the applicant certainly is, and bringing it to closure. We will do everything in our power to get this over the finish line, be responsive to this board, and hopefully meet all the critical pathways. So, starting with the escrow, we did have discussions with staff this afternoon. We committed to sit down with them immediately after this meeting and do a quick accounting and immediately replenish the escrow. We made I believe a $12,000 payment approximately a month ago. I think the applicant thought that that was sufficient to meet the escrow, obviously not, and we will replenish the escrow hopefully within a couple of days, so we will be able to move forward. But what I would like to do is, I know there's 3 new board members. We were told, that it might make sense to just quickly bring some of you up to speed, and also to provide you with at least a framework on how we would approach this matter based upon, having reviewed the record and spoken with staff and legal attorneys and alike. So we did prepare this PowerPoint. Just to stay with me, the page numbers are in the right-hand column at the top of the right corner. So I'll refer to it. I apologize, they're a little small, but on page 1, you can see a rendering, the most recent rendering of what this building will look like, or what is at least being proposed. Page 2, again, for those that are not fully aware of the application, you can see it on an aerial. The site is in red bold. There are 2 parcels below that red area that are known as the plateau parcels, and they're shown on the next page, page 3. They're labeled plateau. There'll be no development on the plateau. I understand from previous iterations that was somewhat controversial, the development on that area of the site. As you can see from both the rendering as well as those of you that know the site, the nearby residences will be buffered by existing vegetation and topo. North Water Street currently paved through the project site. We'll touch upon that very briefly. And that North Water Street is used by public and adjoining landowners and has been for decades. And you can see on page 3 the various landowners that surround the subject parcel, including Santucci, Castle, Plumbing, Wunderlich, and a couple of others. So if you turn to page 4 again, and I apologize, I know a number of you have been on the board throughout this entire proceeding, so this is, I can imagine how difficult it is for you to look at this timeline, for example. But this timeline is a short summary of where this application has been, starting in 2008 with an accepted DEIS and going through various iterations and revisions to the proposal. With the July 2013, a draft FSEIS was submitted. Then it was modified again in March, as well as I know the applicant and its reps had been before this board between January and November, discussing various issues concerning the application. And then in January 2018, we submitted a comparison of the environmental impacts, comparing the March 2017 application with the 2013. If you go to page 5 on the PowerPoint, I'm probably being redundant, but these are the local approvals that are required. I know that this board is as anxious as we are to get through the first step, the secret findings, and site plan with conditions for road access, and I'll discuss that very briefly. And then the planned waterfront special permit density bonus. Those would all be before the planning board for those of you that are new. Village Board of Trustees would be responsible for any Lot 6 improvements. And at this time, we're submitting that no zoning board of appeals are required. And I'll explain that very briefly in a couple of minutes. Page 6, you have the current site plan, the 2017. Again, it was first submitted in March of 2017 with the supplemental FEIS. It was last revised and resubmitted in July 12, 2017. That's the site plan that you currently have before you. And I know that that's been a big issue that this board has expressed in the past, knowing what applications are before you and what plans are before you, and not seeing those plans for the first time at the meeting. So we are going to be very careful and sensitive to that, and try to make sure whatever plans are up for discussion, they're sent to you before the meeting pursuant to your application dates. The current plan has 137 units with a density bonus for green building techniques and affordable housing, which we would apply to before this board. It's a 6-story building, as I mentioned, no development on plateau, it's one building. As I said, you should have a copy of the secret comparison 2018 that we prepared, that I know this board had required for a certain amount of time. Very minor changes between that and 2013. You have the North Water Street is elevated from the previous design pursuant to the FEMA and fire department requirements. We eliminated a secondary access road, and we removed the 3-bedroom units. As I mentioned before, I believe this site plan has been before this board from during 2017 and has been discussed at times. If you look at page 7 and 8, you'll see just a general overall site plan as to what the project essentially looks like on paper. It is, again, this is mainly for the people who are new on the board. There have been, the full drawings submitted to the board, the numerous drawings that are required of any application, including the parking plans, the grading plan sheets, and utility plans, and cross sections, streetscapes, stormwater drainage design, and alike. And these were submitted to the board and are all dated on or around June 28th, June 24th, 2017. So turning further to page 9, you get an idea of some of the visual renderings that were prepared in accordance with the SECRA requirements and the SFEIS with respect to the revised project from the various perspectives and what was required by this board pursuant to SECRA. For those of you that haven't seen all the SECRA documents, obviously you'll want to see them all as part of your lead agency obligations. I know a number of you have already reviewed them. Page 10, various public benefits of the project: access to Korobucky Nature Preserve, open-air monuments celebrating the Pill Factory opportunity, extended river walk along the waterfront, and a possible parking lot on Light 6 that's been discussed at times that we would have to obviously resolve with you and/or the village board if we were to pursue that. On page 11, probably now hitting where the rubber meets the road, if I could be so bold, play on words, for the road plan issues. This has been, I think, the critical issue for this project, and that's access. We have spent, all of us, you and the applicant, to the best of my understanding, a considerable amount of time, both looking at access from a physical as well as legal. We are going to submit to your board that the planning aspect of this is that obviously you need to approve the road design, both from a physical point of view, and we then have to, we would submit, there's going to be conditions of approval. We think that various conditions of approval with respect to the Lot 6 improvements, Lot 6 road improvements, an agreement with Santucci, one of the landowners, an agreement with Castle Realty. And this is the format of structure that we would suggest that as part of the site plan approval process, you would review and determine whether the road is physically designed. And to that effect, we have a number of comment letters that we've received from your consultants, and then that these particular 3 bullets be conditions of approval. And that's a typical way that people pursue these applications. You do it with DOT, you do it county planning, you do it with most road improvements. You get your physical road, you get it approved as part of the site plan process, and then as conditions of approval, we have to provide and obtain the necessary ownership and permissions and consents to develop and build what we have approved. We've already made significant progress in all of these, but rather than have these serve as a sort of a gate to allowing us to proceed, this would be the process that we would propose, and it's one that we typically follow in many of our projects, or most of our projects. In fact, we cited to a number of cases, case law, and the submission we made to you, just a quick letter of 16th in preparation of this meeting, showing that these are the types of private issues that are not necessarily part of the site plan, but are conditions to a site plan approval that we have to perform to be able to proceed and obtain our building permit. Page 12, this is the 2 road plans that you have before you at this time. This copy is called Road Plan 5A, Sheet 5A. That's before you. That was revised, last revised December 1, 2017. This shows Lot 6 and the Santucci property, and I'll get into just each segment of the road to just discuss, but as you can see, just in general, the gray shows the existing pavement. The red lines show the new realigned right-of-way, moderately or modified from the existing pavement. This area has a 24-foot pavement, plus would be 30 with sidewalk and curbing. The green lines show the existing easements, and this plan also shows the existing and proposed grading with some of the cross elevations on the bottom. 5B, on the next page, 13, shows from the Santucci property through our property to through Castle Plumbing. And again, same thing. This shows the same lines, the green and the red, the easements, as well as the cross sections showing the elevations, because I know a major issue of this board has been and will be in proving this, that the road has to get elevated for FEMA purposes, and that it has engineered, and we show the engineered of how the sloping works, where the curb cuts, and how they affect the adjoining property. So those are on the plans. There have been comments made on these plans, and I'll touch on those in a second, but these plans do show these gradings. So going back now for some of the road issues on the next page, 14, this is sort of the first section. That's the Village Lot 6, and that's shown in the green with the green border. That is unquestionably, and everyone agrees, a public road. It's approximately 30 feet in pavement in most of the areas. We would be seeking, as a condition of site plan, that the village approves us for paving sidewalks outside of the easement area for the realigned road. Frankly, if the board, the village board would be the jurisdiction for that. Hopefully this board would refer it positive, that you would like to see the sidewalks in this area. If the village board rejected that, and I guess one arguably in their discretion, then we would just not have sidewalks at that location, even though that would be the preferred, to have sidewalks connecting the project and all the uses along that. And we would have to memorialize it, again, as a condition, if the village board does approve it, how we would perform this work. Typically, we would do it in an agreement that's acceptable to village council. The next page, on page 15, is sort of that second section, if you might, and that's shown in the red border, and that is what's referred to as purple border, I'm sorry. That's referred to typically as the Santucci property. For those of you that don't know, we have a 2004 court stipulation that provides our right to install a roadway and use that easement. There is a discussion to what extent that stipulation or that decision doesn't refer to the height, the elevation in the road. And we have case law that provides that if you have an easement and that easement is in an area that requires an elevation for FEMA purposes, that's permitted under the terms and common law and easement law. Frankly, we are trying to negotiate that with Santucci and obtain a consensual agreement. We would have to construct, as we've shown, the grades and the curb cuts, so that that area, that road and that elevation provides him with adequate access and does not interfere with his business into his parking lots. We think we've designed something that fulfills that standard. But again, we must elevate the road to meet FEMA. Again, we would submit that a condition of site plan approval would either be a written agreement with the Santucci owners or other confirmation of our rights to build that as a precondition to us receiving a building permit. The road does not shift towards the river. We don't intend to do that. It avoids the building and having to remove that building that's closest to the river. As I mentioned, we cannot unreasonably interfere with the Santucci business operations as required both under the stipulation and common law for easements. On page 16 is what we call section 3, the Castle Plumbing section. That's in blue, bordered blue. We have an existing easement for that property. Provides, again, same thing as Santucci, our right to install the roadway. And again, the condition of site plan approval would be a written agreement with Castle or other confirmation of our rights. Both of these are under discussions, negotiation. There have been draft agreements circulated. We hope that we can get it voluntarily, otherwise we would have to resort to other means to provide you with confirmation of our rights to build these sections. Again, condition of approval. If you turn to page 17, I won't dwell on this because it's a little bit, it's a legal issue for the most part, but for those of you that have followed it and I know are familiar with it, this is the question of us, the applicant satisfying Village Law 7736 with respect to, there's a two-part test showing that we have a road and it provides adequate access to our property, and to what extent we would need to obtain a variance in this regard. Our position is that we do not believe we need a variance. I know this is an issue that's bounced around for a while. We'd like to bring this to a head. We feel particularly confident in our analysis of this, and we obviously will have to work this out with your attorneys, but there's a two-part test. First of all, is the street shown on the village tax map or zoning map? And if you look at page 17, you'll see on the side that North Water Street is shown on the village tax map. It's very clear. And the public policy of this is that people of 7736 is people can see the streets and understand the streets and understand how the street makeup works. And that's why the requirement is to be shown on the tax map, and as you see, it's on the tax map, and that we can suitably improve it, which we think we can, and we'll have that, hopefully we'll soon get your consent to. On page 18, you can see on the village zoning map, it's shaded in yellow. On this particular section, it signifies Water Street, and while it doesn't show, I shouldn't say that, while it doesn't list North Water Street on the map, it clearly shows North Water Street. We bolded that in yellow. Again, it's not the type of, these are not the type of what you know as your normal easements, where private easements are typically not shown on zoning maps or village tax maps, and these clearly are, and this, as you all know better than I do, this stretch of North Water Street has been open to the public and used by the public and used by the owners in the area for decades. So with that said, it's our contention that we're not going to require, we do not require a variance, and that we can meet the standards of Village Law 7736. Page 19, these are the next steps. You don't see it on your sheet, but I have it on my sheet, my notes. The first one is escrow. So we will finalize that escrow. Then we would ask your board to authorize your staff to meet with us prior to the next agenda. We'd like to be able to come back to you and finalize the technical and legal issues that have been sort of out there for a while. Just today, Lynn was kind enough to send us a couple of comment letters. That was done by Kellard and Session, July 2017 and October of 2017 on our site plan and the road. They were detailed site plans. Not knowing where the applicant is not on the circulation list, and when we went to our consultants and asked, have you seen these, have you responded to these, the answer was, no, we have not seen these, and did not respond to. The only one that, at least the engineers and other people have seen is, there was an August 21st, 2017 comments, also by Keller and Sessions, preliminary ones that we did see, and we responded to. So we will, prior to the next meeting, review all these comments and ensure that the plans are updated to meet and address all these comments. I'm not sure why and how people did not see these prior to today. We'll make sure that we're working closely together and that we see all these and we address them immediately, and we will do that. So what we would ask is that, being that the escrow is in place, that you authorize your staff and allow us to sit down and work on these technical issues, allow us to update our plans, allow us to submit a package to you by March 12th that has updated plans, addresses any outstanding issues that have been raised either in these comment letters or have been raised by your board previously, that we present at the March 27th meeting, that hopefully at that time that you can provide your conformance with the road plan and your support for the road plan, that you can accept the FSEIS as complete. We will fold in the comparison, the secret comparison into that. That you can perhaps schedule the public hearing on the FSEIS and the site plan for your April meeting if possible. Again, we are going to make every effort to be very responsive and very technical in our responses and lay it all out neatly for you, for this board. And our hope is that at some point you can closely thereafter authorize preparation of secret findings and the resolution of approval for, you know, late spring or early summer. So again, we're trying to pull it together, be responsive. I think this is a project that, at least I've heard, and looking at the record, most people think is positive. It's just working out a lot of the details, and there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So, presentation complete.
I have one question. Refresh my memory on the size of the lot we're talking about, and also is the plateau in play for the density calculations, or is that not in the site plan?
Just the 5 acres.
Just 5 acres, and the plateau is not being used
For zoning conformance
for zoning conformance or density.
Okay, so just, if you're going to update this, just add on 6 and not part of site plan.
Okay.
We're going to move around the table with questions.
And anything you think we should be addressing and really focusing on, it's also helpful. So, you know, there's a lot of history here.
Okay. So, thank you. The other question that I have, that you remarked as a condition of approval, would be the engineered road. So, but can you help us understand why we can't deliver that sooner than later?
I maybe misspoke or misunderstood. The engineering details for the road, we need to provide you and have it before you. So we believe we have a lot of that in sheets 5A and 5B are before you, and has answered a lot of the issues and questions that were raised, including a lot of the grading and cross sections and the like. And I know, as I said before, there were a number of technical engineering questions that were raised by Keller and Sessions in those 2 comment letters that we need to update those plans to reflect. So, Mr. Chairman, as far as I'm concerned, that's part of your approval, and we would hope you would approve it. The only thing I'm saying are conditions of approval is us now getting the necessary approvals from the various parties to implement that.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks. So, John, you want to, can we go down the line?
It's a minor observation, and forgive me for this. It's the lane I drive in.
Excuse me?
It's the lane I drive in. The cover rendering and the renderings of the building as expressed on page 9, is my understanding and my recollection of, they're two different buildings. And I understand that the answer is likely to be, well, they're reasonable facsimiles of footprints. One was a much earlier version than the rendering on page 9, but, and so be it. My question is, can we confirm where we're headed here? Are we revisiting the aesthetics and some of the notions on the cover? Or are we headed down, or are we headed on page 9?
Page 9.
Okay.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it would be very helpful to understand the grading. There are some very high boulders coming in, and I can see that you're carving in certain places where I know it's several, 20 or 30 feet tall. And it would be helpful to understand how that is going to be treated. It is very noticeable from the river. So, how you are retaining that, if there's anything to be retained, how is that going to be visible? What is the sight line from the river to see that there? I think that is an important, to me at least, is a very important issue of retaining and maintaining the sort of bucolic visibility that we have from the river currently looking into this whole section. And I'd like to be able to see that and understand that better before I could really say that I think it's a great idea the way you have. I understand completely the way that you are smoothing out the road, as Annette said before, for access. And I think it's much better than what you had before, where you had the big culvert going around the building, which I also thought was going to be very difficult to even achieve. And site-wise, it was not really very becoming. So I think this is a much better approach, but again, seeing things in elevation, in sections, so we can really understand how you're going to grade down towards the Santucci, towards the river, towards the other different issues, I think would be really important.
Okay, I believe a lot of that is already in those sheets on 5A and 5B, and what we will do is, Paul, do you want to just fix that?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Paul Bertil from Petroselli Engineering. So if there's additional views that the board would like to see, I guess that's something that would be helpful for us to know so that we can accommodate that. But we provided the 4 different angles from the river, from the south, north, and from the east.
I think early you had in an earlier rendition when you still had the sort of the circle around
The
the building.
access road around?
You had some really clear-cut sections through.
Yeah.
So you could sort of get a sense of how, what the grade difference would be. And I
Right.
think that would be very helpful.
We'll make sure that in the site plan set, that those sections, they are still in that site plan set, but we'll also make sure that those sections match and are clear for you to make a review.
Okay. And we'll also, to your point, since it is important, and again, we're going to try to keep this focused and responsive in the narrative that we provide, accompanying a submission on the 12th. We'll point out where those elevations are, give a little bit of a description of them and alike, so you can focus right in on it. Not get lost in all the paper.
What's meant by the open-air monument celebrating Brandreth Hill Factory?
Anybody?
It's intended to be, and maybe
If I may,
can do a better job. than
Nick
I can.
Stolatis with Plateau Associates. It's an open arcade kiosk. considered to be an open-air museum that'll have information. It'll be designed to emulate and take elements from the pill factory and be accessible to whoever walks down North Water Street.
Does open air mean no roof?
It means no doors. It'll have a roof. It'll be a pavilion. You know, maybe that's the best description.
Roughly what dimension? Roughly what dimension?
That hasn't been determined yet.
Something on the side of, something about 15 by 20, something that would be enough of
12 by 12.
enough of a structure where
Detail.
it could be some artifacts or some photos of what the pill factory was, I think, in line, in keeping with what the village has kind of asked us to
So
do.
those displays will be protected from the weather, from the elements?
From the elements, yeah, it would have a roof, it would be, the design
Inside.
intention is for it to, right now, is just to have open air with a covered roof and
Much
architecture.
like many other open air that we see in many of the communities in Westchester, where they'll have signboards, you know, those are laminated, they're protected, they're out in the open, so it's not a matter of having them in an air-conditioned space, that's not necessary. It'll be very, very similar.
We will, like some of you, learning some of these things for the first time. So something like this has to be put on our site plan drawings. So we will do that.
Have you given thought maybe to, I mean, there's still one structure that left the, what do you call the office? Have you given thought to possibly move that structure?
It's not movable. The
It is
engineering
not.
reports have shown any effect, any touching of that, it's ready to fall down now. You know, this property's been deteriorating for decades, and the engineering reports clearly state that it's not salvageable.
And it can't be moved brick by brick to say, to
No.
create that,
The
museum structure that you're
No.
thinking of in a
It cannot
different
be.
part of the property?
Physically, it's
Something
unable to.
possibly.
It's been shown by the technical experts as to be physically unable to be moved. It'll just fall. It'll crumble, actually. The mortar has been deteriorating for decades.
Part of that building could also be part of your
Such elements as can be salvaged.
That could be salvaged.
We've stated in the
Mhm.
secret that we would salvage such parts that are salvageable. But we can make no representation that any of it would be, because once you touch that, as we've seen in many other situations, you know, the best efforts to go in and buildings just collapse. So they have to be done in a way that's safe and prudent in attempting to do that.
Okay, let's look at that issue. I mean, we cite it to something as an improvement, and I think you need more details on it, and we need to put it on the site plan with more details, so we'll do that.
Yep.
My only question had to do with the elevating the roadway, and I'm one of the new planning board members, so I
Mhm.
promised to
Sure.
read everything once we have it all, but the elevation of the roadway, is that in the EIS, is that studied versus what was originally
Yes,
proposed?
that's in there. That's in the SFE, the latest SFEIS. We have stormwater drainage, we had to include on that.
All based upon the.
All based upon the higher elevations. So obviously, we have new drainage issues in play to deal with.
That was it.
Jesus, welcome to the planning. Thank you. We'll let you off the hook tonight.
Well, you told me to leave my 4 boxes with him with the files.
I got a couple assistants out there.
You know where those go,
Okay.
right?
Any other questions tonight? No? Okay. It would be, I think as John pointed out, it would be good to see a better rendering. I'm not sure who your architect is,
We're just trying to do the picture-in-picture with
but it's
the,
really,
Got
make
it.
them
some
consistent.
work is required.
Picture in picture.
Okay.
Could we have your blessing to your staff to work with us to really put together the package for the tour?
Sure. So check, when the check arrives in the mail, we're ready to go.
Thank you.
We will meet with you ASAP on the escrow issue and then proceed.
You'll get a call tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Super.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So we'll adjourn this for tonight.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, and we will go to Kurt Avenue, the Baker property. You have another introduction? Okay.
Okay, so at the January meeting, this board discussed this application for the Baker property on Croton Avenue, and this board,
Got bigger, that really got bigger.
and it relocated. Sorry. Oh, okay, so I guess we don't have it in here. You discussed taking a negative declaration on their impacts and moving it forward, and you discussed sending them on to the zoning board, and they did appear at the zoning board on the 13th of this month, and they presented the case. The zoning board heard it, and told them they weren't going to make a decision at that meeting, and are presumably going to come back and discuss it in March. So for the purposes of tonight, the applicant still owes us some edits to their long EAF, which they have indicated will be forthcoming. And so for the purposes of tonight, staff has prepared a draft of the negative declaration, and if the board is okay with it, we can move forward. It's simply, I can...
This is one page, right?
Yeah, front and back.
Okay.
Lynn, do you have one more copy?
Okay, but we probably haven't really got it.
I wish to share.
No, no, no.
That's like 15 copies.
You might have got mixed in with those.
Here we go. There we go.
Does this property have a street address?
It does not.
No.
I think to get
They do not have a street address currently.
Really?
They do not. There's nothing in the system. They would have to get it.
It's vacant, it's been vacant since they bought it. You didn't demolish the building, right? In the early 90s, late 80s? There's been no structure there. It appears to me that there was once a structure there, but that's just my visual.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there was. I'm just surprised that, like, number 9. Yeah. Okay, so we're all reading.
Do you want me to read it too, or do you want to?
No, well, if somebody's going to read it, if we decide to adopt it, that's for sure. Did you have anything you wanted to say in the meantime, or you just want to wait for us to read?
Just briefly, what Lynn said was correct. We've been to the zoning board. I feel like we are on a dual track now, which is what we had hoped to do for a long while. We're with the zoning board, and they were not prepared to take action on, so the board asked us not to ask them to make a decision at this February 13th meeting. We've adjourned to March 13th, and that's fine. We'll be back before them. I don't think that this secret issue or any of the planning, site plan issues will interfere with our process through the zoning board. At the same time now, we're asking this board to adopt a negative declaration in secret, and then we're going to ultimately ask to come back to the next meeting to proceed with our actual site plan approval. If we haven't gotten anywhere with the zoning board, if we're adjourned again, we're going to ask to carry this rather than, we want to get through the zoning board first and hopefully, fingers crossed, get our variances before we continue on the site plan approval process with this board. When we're asking for the negative declaration tonight, if you're willing to do that.
And do we have, you got here under the whereas, month, day, and year of
That's the-
subsequent, is there just one date? Do we have, I
Did-
assume we have multiple revisions?
We have, well, that's for the EAF, and we have an original submission in February of 2017, and we're waiting for the revision.
Okay.
What are the nature of the revisions?
It's details of the soil, the depth to bedrock, and some of the other stuff like that.
Okay.
It's like two specific sections, like, it was like D1, and I think E2, I believe it was.
Okay. Is it appropriate to proceed without the EAF?
We have, the consulting engineer reviewed their stormwater protection plan, and believe that was ready to go forward for seeker. They have to do more soil testing and more other stuff to get some of the other additional data, but they should be able to submit that information to us.
I can get Mr. Perdue, he's with the other applicant at the moment out in the hallway. He's our consulting engineer. I didn't realize he stepped out of the room. If you'd like to ask him any questions, or if he could maybe enlighten the board on those issues. So if you don't mind me taking 30 seconds to grab him and bring him in. Oh, great.
Consent.
I don't know, maybe Stuart, if you had any thoughts on that?
No, oh, and I'll turn it back on, I'll do my radio voice. I believe that the negative deck that's presented here, even with the revisions that are being requested, is consistent with what was discussed by the board previously and encompasses everything that we had before. There's going to be nothing in the revisions which would change the determination of a lack of an environmental impact with regard to what this particular project is. I believe it's an unlisted action. And so that we would just fill in the date, that particular information when we get it from Mr. Hernandez, plus we'll also put in the dates of the hearing in terms of advertisement. But other than that, I think with those changes, the board can entertain this negative declaration at this time.
And I think that those details may impact, for example, the specific engineering of the stormwater management program, for example, because it involves soil type. So you might have a different stormwater system, but really no matter what the answer to those questions are, it's been determined that we have sufficient room and the ability to build a stormwater system that will adequately serve this site. So yes, they are details, but I'm going to agree with Stuart that it's not something that will either way influence or shouldn't influence whether or not this is a negative declaration. The same determination should be made that there's no significant environmental impact because, again, with regard to soil, stormwater can be managed on site, regardless of what it is.
So also to append what Mr. Sardiani said, their proposal is for a 12-unit building, 9 I believe are 1 bedrooms, 3 and 2.
The specific nine ones and 3 twos?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 9 ones and 3 twos.
And they are surrounded by other larger buildings. They're right next to.
Right, our site is the
This is the
little
green.
oval.
This is,
green.
this is their
I'm
site.
familiar with the reference, yeah.
This is
Next
a
to
larger,
Valvoline.
yeah, so they're right next to Valvoline. They're adjacent to Clinton Terrace, which is a larger complex of multifamily housing. There's another complex here, and they have mixed use across the way. There are multiple zoning districts, and there's Walgreens. If you went back a little bit, this is OVAC. This is a
You go up high enough, you come to my house.
Yeah, I guess my question was more as like a technical matter. Before the EAF, if we're still waiting on revisions.
Well, the important thing that Lynn pointed out is that when the documents were reviewed by our outside consultant, Keller Sessions, the issues they had were technical issues relating to stormwater, but they considered that it was sufficient for SEQR to proceed and to go forward with the negative declaration. So there would be nothing in those documents which would change that ultimate conclusion.
Lynn, can you remind me how many affordable units are contained in this project?
It's 2. They're required to the 10% side, and we can't do a 1.2 apartment, so it'll be 2.
We've retrieved Mr. Perdue from the hallway, so if you have any questions concerning the engineering issues.
Perfect time. So as I read this, and I think about Jeff's comment, is there another whereas that needs to be inserted? Which says that should, from this moment forward, something that should a yet undetermined environmental factor be identified, appropriate mitigations will be required.
We would consent to that.
That would be fine. I would agree.
We don't have any objection to that sort of language. Because you're right, I mean, if this information tips off your consulting engineer that something is really out of whack and it doesn't work, you'll want us to come back, and I appreciate
You
that.
have no idea when we start to dig the hole what you're going to find in there.
Sure.
But soil testing is soil testing, but, you know.
I agree.
Okay, I'm good with that. Everybody to know?
Yeah, good.
Yep.
Fine.
So, we need to read this into the record. Since we all have it in front of us, but since we are now on live TV, they're not gonna know what we did.
If you, I can read it into the record if you like.
Are we suggesting it be read into the record as a function of a motion to approve?
That would be the purpose of reading it into the record. Since we don't have a final version for you to do, and if we could get it approved tonight, and that essentially then that becomes the minutes, and that becomes official when the minutes are signed off on.
Then is it appropriate for me to make that motion?
I think we agree.
You can move forward, yes.
Stipulation we put in.
Okay.
So John moves. We need a second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Would you like it read into the record?
You can read it to the record.
Take turns if you want.
No.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say tomorrow night, so I let someone.
Okay, the proposed negative declaration for the Baker property, whereas pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR, and corresponding regulations thereto, the Village of Austining Planning Board, the board, assumed the role of lead agency on December 14, 2016 for an application for site plan approval from William Baker and Edward Baker, the applicant, for property identified as parcel ID 89.19-2-17, which property is located on Croton Avenue near the intersection with Clinton Avenue at the Village of Austining, New York. That is the site, seeking site plan approval to construct a 12-unit residential apartment building, which is the action. And whereas the subject premises is known and designated as section 89.19, block 2, lot 17 on the tax assessment map of the Village of Austining. And whereas the subject premises is located in an MF2 zone district, multifamily zone on Croton Avenue, also known as New York State Route 133. Croton Avenue is a 2-lane road with 1 travel lane in each direction and a parking lane on the opposite side of the street from the subject property. And whereas the subject property is an unimproved piece of land on Croton Avenue, a short distance from the intersection with Clinton Avenue. Whereas the surrounding land uses include large-scale multifamily dwellings, an oil change facility adjacent to the property, and a variety of smaller-scale mixed uses across the street, which are primarily small retail commercial uses with residential above. Whereas the subject site is zoned MF2 and nearby zoning districts include VC, NC2, and T zones. Whereas the board determined that the proposed action as the subject of this application is an unlisted action, and whereas the applicant's architect, Jorge Hernandez, filed a long environmental assessment form in February of 2017 with revisions to be submitted, which was reviewed by the planning board.
and the board determined that a coordinated review is necessary, and whereas the planning department sent out notice of intent to be lead agency on October 28th of 2016, whereas there were no objections from any of the agencies with respect to the planning board becoming lead agency, whereas the planning board voted to become lead agency on December 14th of 2016, whereas the subject premises is not located within a local waterfront revitalization district or a critical environmental area, and whereas the planning board requested traffic information and the applicant's engineer, Petroselli Engineering, submitted correspondence dated November 13th, 2017, which included trip generation rates, whereas the planning board requested a photometric plan and the applicant submitted that data. He inadvertently left off the date. I can supply it. Whereas the board in the Village of Austining Department of Planning reviewed the proposed action and the impacts associated with its implementation, and the board found that there will be no significant environmental impacts resulting from the proposed action. The basis for this assessment is set forth in the EAF and the proposed negative declaration, which are deemed part of this resolution. And whereas the board has considered the public health, safety, and welfare and the comfort and convenience of the public in general, and of the prospective occupants of the proposed development and of the immediate neighborhood in particular. And whereas the board considered, among other things, traffic, access, circulation, and parking, landscaping, and screening, and whether the elements of the site plan will adversely affect the potential of the site and adjacent properties from the highest and best use, whether these elements will exceed the capabilities of existing municipal roads or utility services. And whereas a duly advertised public hearing was held by the board, and we can insert the multiple dates, at which time all those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard, and the public hearing was closed. And then whereas should a yet undetermined environmental factor be identified in the future, the appropriate mitigation would be required to be undertaken. Now therefore it is resolved as follows: in accordance with Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Laws, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and the implementing regulations in 6 NYCRR Part 617, the board has reviewed the proposed action and the impacts associated with its implementation, and found that there will be no significant environmental impacts resulting from the proposed action, and issues a negative declaration.
Okay, I just have a question. So, the proposed action, does that include any mitigation of the impacts that they're going to create as a result of it? I mean, they're going to, there's going to be runoff, right?
If I can address that,
But I don't see, it's just a formality in my mind of how you quantify. If I read this, it said that there'd be no environmental impact. But there
no
will be.
significant environmental impacts.
Well, but they're going to be mitigated. Well, my point is you're going to disturb land, you're going to deal with rainwater, you're going to deal with all that, right? If you didn't do it, it would be green.
Correct.
Right? And it would be natural runoff, et cetera. So you're going to replace green with a building, so therefore you had to have some mitigation to get zero discharge back, right?
Right.
But am I being too technical?
Can I have another
This-
And I'm just saying, just a word, it's just a word that says, obviously there's mitigation going to happen on this site, but no place do we say anything about it.
But doesn't that follow the site plan and the final resolution?
Well, it's sort of in here, but it says that the proposed action and issues, it says there will be no significant environmental impact resulting from the proposed action and issues a negative declaration. I'm just saying, is that reasonable enough? Or are we going to recognize that they're going to have to do some mitigation? I mean, the water's going to do something.
Well, the proposed action that this board is taking is the approval of a site plan. This is a negative declaration that if we build that site plan, that there will be no significant impacts. That site plan includes drainage, stormwater runoff, lighting, traffic. Those are all the environmental impacts that site plan approval and ultimate development will have, and this determination is that none of those, based on the way we're building the building, as will be approved in the site plan, will have significant environmental impacts. The site plan is 85% done, but there are details.
So the action is the site plan development.
Correct.
So I just want to be clear about the language.
Right, so, and just to put a real point on it, although the site plan is not yet approved, it is conceptually, you've said conceptually approved, and it's gonna be detailed, and we're gonna be coming back to go through that process.
I'm okay as long as we've cleared up what the definition of proposed action. Proposed action is the action of site development.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, in the opening paragraph, it defines site plan approval to construct a 12-unit residential apartment identified as the action. So that would be your action that we're referring to throughout the rest of the negative declaration.
And at the end of the day, your engineer is going to have to approve our, for example, stormwater management plan. It's going to include underground cisterns and dry wells and whatever engineering decides. That's beyond the scope of my
All
knowledge.
right, we're good. We've already voted.
Thank you.
And Lynn, I'm going to ask, can we, instead of being on the March planning board meeting, be on the April planning board meeting? That way we'll go back to the zoning board, and if we are approved for the variances, we'll have time to come back with you to augment our site plan application with the details that we would need to move forward with the site plan application.
That's fine, just send me a formal letter. so
Okay.
I can file.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. 25 Terrace. They voted.
This is fun.
Is there anything on 25 Terrace?
Sorry, 25 Terrace, they have just set up an escrow account, and we sent out their plans to Howard Sessions, so they should be back. Yes, because remember they had the retaining wall that was on the property line, and so they had engineering issues, and that was pointed out, and so we, they just set it up, we sent it out, and we should be getting a response for the review report from Howard Sessions early March.
Victoria Home?
Victoria Home has adjourned. They have some modifications they're gonna make to their site plan, so before they come back to you, they'd like to just make them all at once.
86 South
So
Island?
86 South Highland, you guys actually sent them to the zoning board. They have not submitted an application. And if you guys wish to remove 86 South Highland from the agenda, they've been on it for months.
I'm just curious, when you say legalize an existing 5-family residence when records indicate a 3-family residence, what records are those? Are those
Tax records, tax assessment.
just tax records?
Tax assessment records, our
No building
records.
department records?
So
We have
are they in the court?
I don't know, actually, I can find out.
I don't think they are.
Should they be?
We can find out.
I have to check if there's a pending violation. I can look at that. That doesn't, from the cases I've handled, that doesn't sound familiar.
What was it they were seeking from the planning board?
They wanted to turn what we saw as a 3-family house through tax records, and that there was no request made to the zoning board or to this board to make it into
Okay.
a
But what-
multi-family house.
What would they
So-
actually be seeking, like, what approval would they be seeking from the planning board? Would that be,
It's
like, to
conditional
legalize,
use
like?
for multifamily and a
Okay,
PF.
okay.
Yeah.
Conditional use.
Okay, so let's leave it on the agenda until we figure out whether they should be in court or not.
Yep.
And I think we may want to have more of a general discussion about that as well. What's the ramifications of that in that district if we say yes to that? Because there might be many more,
There are plenty.
right? There's a lot of them.
Like every other month.
So just to finish, to kind of close the loop, if it said there were 5 tax units, they wouldn't be here, right? Essentially, that
Right.
an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay.
They're legalizing an issue, an oversight. So 49 Spring, we decided it's
So
tabled.
you sent them to the zoning board, and they have not yet submitted a complete application to the zoning board.
And 173?
We have not heard from them. They have not submitted any updated materials for this application.
You know what, there's still, since the last, when were they here last? October?
I think they were here.
Yeah.
November, maybe? I don't know if they were here in
Well,
October. Maybe
The
October,
Coyote
and
and
then.
it wasn't then.
No.
They were-
I just remember, I just recognized the name, I just thought maybe I.
So, I don't know, let's find out. We should put on this when they last showed up, not when it started.
And may I add to, if they reappear, we know they're gonna have this application's gonna have an attorney in tow who's going to ask the question again about the concept of how we're interpreting the uses and where it fits into the framework of our application recognition. And can we have an answer for that so that, or can we have a consensus of?
We can have an answer before they come back.
Yeah,
because-
I'm thinking we should.
Because that attorney, yeah, because he had come in with his own paperwork on that, because that attorney, I know that they had served FOIL requests for
Right, he's
basically
headed
every service
for
station
something.
on North Island.
Right.
So, that's fine, we can do that.
Okay, so 35 Croton Avenue,
They are working with staff and hopefully will have a
Okay.
complete material submitted.
okay?
191 has actually withdrawn, you should have received the
Yeah, that's fine.
email.
I'm still not understanding there. Old business, Dan Beaton is just hanging out.
Correct.
He is, yes. The application.
For what reason?
He is looking for a text amendment, and he and I have been having some
Okay,
discussions
so
on
this is
that.
ongoing?
It's
Okay,
ongoing,
So there's
sir.
no reason to take it off, okay.
Okay.
No action required on the text amendment? Right.
Right. We've had our discussions at the two work sessions, so there's nothing further now.
So, for those of you who were at the January 23rd meeting of the boards, is there any questions, comments? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Mike, okay.
I'll second.
John, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. We can, any other business come before the board tonight? We can move to adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.